work in the 1970s, in which they noted situational leaders vary their leadership style based on the needs of specific situations. Sometimes they might delegate a project to subordinates and be completely hands-off. Other times they might delegate while remaining in a supporting role. They may offer coaching. They may take a specific directive role, all depending on the varying needs of the specific situation. A challenge of situational leadership is that followers can feel that the leader is inconsistent, treating some employees better or different than others. That brings us to servant leadership. The phrase servant leadership was coined by Robert Greenleaf in the 1970s. A number of authors have expanded on Greenleaf's work, and you might be familiar with some of them, including Covey in his work on principle-centered leadership, Peter Senge in his work on the fifth discipline, and John Maxwell in his work entitled The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Maxwell's my personal favorite, so I'm going to tell you a little bit more about his theories. Maxwell writes that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. I'm going to highlight 6 markers out of those 21 that Maxwell identifies in his book. He says, first, character. Servant leaders know who they are. Their character remains constant. It all begins with the leader's heart for service. The second, relationships. Servant leaders invest in their people. They go beyond to get to know their colleagues. Third is knowledge. Servant leaders take the time to do their homework and become true knowledge experts in their field. Fourth, intuition. Servant leaders are aware of intangible markers of success, such as energy, timing, momentum, staff morale. Fifth is experience. Servant leaders know where they come from. They draw from their past experiences. They apply what they've learned to current circumstances. Sixth, investment in people. Because servant leaders have taken the time to get to know their employees, they've learned what their people are capable of, and they support them, which builds leadership density within the organization. Today's symposium is focused on servant leadership. We're going to hear from a panel of extraordinary individuals who are in leadership roles in their respective organizations. Each of them is doing exceptional work to move their organizations forward by investing in their people. And I, for one, am excited to hear what they have to say.
Thank you, Dr. Kearney. Thank you. So we're going to go ahead without delay, again, from theoretical framework now to hear from our practitioners. So I'm going to invite Dr. Joshua. Dr. Joshua here. Let's give her a hand, please. You can tell our age. I'm doing the Regis and Kathy Lee, or the Ryan and Kelly, or Kelly and Mark. I don't know what to tell our age. Yeah. All right. So we're going to go ahead and start, and if you can just kind of introduce yourself and your role, your current role, and then just talk about maybe through your current position, what does servant leadership mean to you? So if we can we go ahead and start with you, Dr. Flores? If you want to give us, if you turn your mics on and give us exactly who you are, your role, and then just talk about how servant leadership, how you're able to implement and integrate servant leadership in your capacity.
Absolutely. So no pressure going first, right? First and foremost, I want to say thank you for your attendance here, and everyone looks so much younger. I remember sitting on that side, but thank you for protecting this time to come in to be a part of this important event. First of all, my name is Rick Flores, and I'm the proud principal of Lanier High School in San Antonio ISD, the pride of the West Side. And I'll tell you what, as I start, this is year 29 for me in public education, and what a tremendous honor. And what a tremendous blessing it is to occupy the space of privilege that I currently occupy. That is not a position that I take lightly, nor do I encourage anyone in these ed leadership courses to take, because let me tell you, it's all about the people. If there's anything, as I go back and reflect on my undergraduate and graduate work and doctoral work, is the importance of people, but yet when I was at the university level, we had very few courses in communication and public relations, yet everything we do, our success is predicated as an organization on the people, because it's the people that move the work, it's not the programs. One of the things that I wanted to share with you is, as organizational leaders, we fall into one of two categories. Number one, are you a servant leader or a self-serving leader? So this is not the time when you're going to confess to your neighbor, okay? So I just want to leave that on you. But most importantly, We may feel we're servant leaders, but what would your colleagues say about you that you are in your current workspace or in your sphere of influence? Secondly, I wanted to just really touch base real quick in the work of Connors and Smith on culture. Culture is very, very important. Because culture defines, this is how we do things in our organization. And the culture is very powerful because what you see on top is one thing, but it's that undercurrent that you have to be real careful with because every organization has an undercurrent. And so that's really important to remember. Also, I wanted to remind you of the importance of not only the servant leadership piece, but also the systems that you have in your organization, which are very, very powerful. Because the systems that you currently have in place are perfectly designed to give you the results that you're currently getting. So if you don't like the results that you're getting, it's an excellent time to really reflect on the systems that you have in place. And at our campus, one of the things that we did when I came on board a year and a few months ago to Lanier High School, one of the systemic things that we looked at, it's still a work in progress. So if we were a construction sign at Lanier High School, our sign would read under construction. Because we are. There are some things in the system that have to be tight, and there are some things that have to be loosened just a little bit. I will tell you that you have to have the right people. And I always thought that people were your most important commodity. And then in reading some of the work of John Maxwell, he really talks about the work of hiring the right people. Because people matter. Not just another warm body, but hiring the right people that understand the work that needs to be done. Because I've always said there are two types of individuals in every organization. Those that are ready to roll up their sleeves and get to work, and those that are always ready to roll their eyes. Which one are you? Again, it's not conviction time. This is not the time where you can talk to your neighbor, but this is something that we certainly want to look at to reflect. And then lastly, when we think about servant leadership, it's specifically to Lanier. I've been in San Antonio IZ now for 24 years, and one of my former students is here, Manny. So I'll say, Manny, it's great to see one of my former students in the audience. But I want to share with you that we have to get to the space and place where we look at students not through the lens of a W-2 form or a STAR test. We realize how important they are, and they each play their specific role, but I want to tell you that the only number that should identify our students is the last four of their social security, not their parents' W-2 form. And we need to get to the space and place where we look at children through the same lens that you and I would want our own children, my own Rebecca, my Isaiah, my Elijah, my Ricky Jr. Look at other people's children the same way that you will want others to look at yours or your loved ones. Thank you.
What a beginning. There you go. Superintendent Toscano.
My man's preaching. I love it. What he said. Well, I mean, just thankful to be here tonight with all of you and proud of all of your commitment to yourself, but also to the future of public education. Leadership matters. You know, I also ascribe to the work of John Maxwell and the idea that, you know, to get everything you want or need as a leader, you got to help other people get everything they want and need. And so I have learned through the School of Hard Knocks in the last 30 years as an educator, 10 years as superintendent, that you got to spend more time using 2 ears and less time using your one mouth, and seek first to understand so that you can enter into every conversation in the spirit of negotiation as opposed to conflict, where you're interested in winning and being right as opposed to doing right, and seeking to understand the interest of the other party, whether that other party is your community, whether it's your employees, whether it's your board of trustees or your students. You have to understand the values and interests that they have, the problems they're trying to solve, the needs that they believe that they're advocating for, so that then you can find common ground. And in doing so, you can ensure to make forward progress, right? We're always in pursuit of perfection. No one will never achieve it, but we should always, in every interaction, make every decision in a way that guarantees forward progress towards perfection, right? So happy to be here, happy to gain some insight from my colleagues. I look forward to the questions that you guys have at the end. And again, congratulations and investing in yourself.
Outstanding, outstanding. I think John Maxwell probably needs to start paying us some royalties, right? We actually have some East Central folks in here, correct? East Central, raise your hand. East Central? All right. All right, good to hear directly from your superintendent. Awesome. All right, Dr. Rocha Garcia, Councilwoman.
Well, hi everyone. I'm so excited to be here, and I feel like I was in another panel. I was in a judges panel this morning, but what I wanted to let you all know was that I had an awesome day. I started off teaching. I teach at Our Lady of Lake University, my little students, I call them, so I make them mine. And I just take full authority, and I'm like, no, you should be doing this, or you should consider this. So I feel like a mom, right? But then I went to the Fashion Awards. It's a Texas Fashion Week, and there were students there that had designs. They were presenting. There's 50 students from all over the city of San Antonio, but their teachers were there with them. And I started off by thanking their teachers, because let's acknowledge that you all have a thankless job many, many times. And when we think about it, and look, I signed up for this, I'm a politician, right? So I'm gonna get criticism, let's do this, right? But you all are doing this because of your big hearts, and because you truly are servant leaders. So I thank the educators there for being there. And now I end up here, right, with a whole bunch of educators, and I see several educators that I know in the crowd. And so Dr. Kearney, I followed you because you have just produced wonderful people at Southwest ISD. I'm a product of public school, K through high school, Southwest ISD, proud dragon. I see Eliza Battles in the back, who's now at the Young Women's Leadership Academy. And I gotta give a shout out to my little cousin, and that's Ms. Decos. Vanessa Decos is here, another educator in the room. And the reason that I feel so confident in being on the City Council and representing you all is because I feel that I get to take back your perception, right? Your reality. So I worked at Southwest ISD. So when you start telling me about kids who are food insecure, I've known kids who are food insecure, just like the ones that you take care of every day. When we talk about kids who get abused every single day, I've known that as well, through you all. And through the great work, by the way, our social workers do as well. So I get to represent you, and I'm very proud to tell you all that as a servant leader, there's 6 of us right now on the City Council. I don't know if this has ever happened, but we have a majority educator council in San Antonio. And so for you all to be represented at that level by a majority, I just want you to recognize that that can only happen in San Antonio. Wow, right? I mean, for 6 educators, and so, or retired educators, right? And so, Compassionate City USA, we preach that all the time at the city. Our equity budget, right? The importance of leading with our heart and realizing that it's not just about being equal, it's about bringing equity into the mix. You all know this every single day with your students. Not everybody learns the same. You all change your plans, your lesson plans. The way that you adapt is just incredible. And so it doesn't go unnoticed, is what I'm saying at the city level. Inclusivity, right? We think about inclusivity and the need to, as a servant leader, to make sure that everybody feels welcome, that everybody has a seat at the table, that if somebody joins, you bring a chair up for them, right? And so you welcome them to the conversation. And so to me, that's how servant leadership has positively impacted us at the City Council level. The fact that we have, again, a majority, I do have to say, we have a majority female council as well. So we have a lot of empathy and compassion, but that educator, I don't think that we talk about it enough, that we are a majority council of educators. So from the servant leadership perspective, we've done the work that you do, and we want to continue to be advocates for you all.
Thank you, Councilwoman, Dr. Rocha Garcia. Now, President Ochoa.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, my voice doesn't carry very well. I'm just recovering from COVID last week, so hopefully I'll make sense. When I think of servant leader, I think the first thing that comes into my mind is shared governance and shared leadership. And it's very important that you recognize that while yes, you could be at the top of the ladder or at the helm, it is very important that you can't do it alone, and that you get more accomplished when people work with you. And I say that because it's really, really important that if people are going to work with you, then they should have a stake and a say in that process, because they're going to be working alongside you, and they have to believe that they had a vested interest in that process. And if it comes down, and I think to me, servant leader means that you start off with an idea and what you discuss that with people around you, and it makes that idea better. And there are things that you think you've covered every base, and then you just keep on building and saying we all contribute this, and we all have a stake in the game. And I say that because I think that when I've worked with many different leaders, many different presidents, different provosts, and they were all very, very different. And I think that I've seen, when I look up, rather than being now in this role, is that it's very, very critical that we really do not, we look at the technical skills of that person, which are important, but they're not enough to cross that goal line. It's that human element that I think is very, very important. And I say that because that when you look at that, people with you need to know that you work with them, that you work for them, and you work alongside them. And for some people, they said, Hector, well, God, that sounds like micromanagement. I said, no. Other people have said, you cared enough to learn, to go into the weeds with me and tread this problem with me. It shows that you care to know what I'm going through. And when you can take time, that even though you're valuable time, and you can say, okay, if we're going to work on this together, I need to understand your journey in that process. And I think that when you do that, you earn a lot of respect in that process. But for me, one thing that I've learned is one of my former leaders who I really respect, and mentors, sat me down one day and said, Hector, you really need to go into administration. I don't know what you put in your Kool-Aid, but I'm not that. And I said that with all honesty. And he goes, Hector, I'm going to give you a bit of advice. Sometimes people who want to be leaders are not the ones that should be leaders. It's the ones that have to be convinced to do that work, where people see what they see with them. And that was very thought-provoking. And he goes, you may not want, it's not on your radar screen, but I know one day you're going to be doing this because I think you have that innate ability, but I think you come with a place of heart. And I think what's really important about servant leadership is that I'll give it to you in two ways, from looking up and coming down. One time as a faculty member, there was a very controversial decision that needed to be made. And the poor chair was struggling with that decision. And I said, no matter where this person steps, it's not going to be good. But he's got to make that decision. And I went into his office and I said, I want you to know that I know the decision you made. I probably would have made a different decision. But I want you to know that I believe in you. And I know that you make the decision that you felt that was best. And you probably see other factors that you can't tell me. So even though I disagree with you now, I know that you make the right decision because you earned my trust. And when you earn that trust of people, when maybe the cloud doesn't look good or the road seems too hard to tow, then you're given that sense of grace. And I learned that one time because I remember as a dean at Pan Am, I had people who'd been former presidents, former superintendents, big people at TEA, and there was a very tough decision I needed to make. And I really felt that I made the right decision. And I was challenged pretty hard by some of these individuals. And when I moved to the University of New Mexico, one of these individuals who was considered the superintendent all over the Grand Valley came to talk to me. And he goes, Hector, I know I gave you a hard time, and we didn't agree, but I want you to know how much I respect you, and that you really believed, because you had so much vision, and what you really have consulted everything, you made the best decision possible. And I think when you have leaders like that, and really that you've looked at everything, and people know that you've earned it, you earn that grace, that they know your heart, that you're, with the decisions you've made them with as much due diligence as you could do, and you've consulted with everybody, and everybody feels that they've been heard. And I think that's really, really important in servant leadership. That, it's nice when everybody's rowing the boat and there's no problems, but there's some really tough decisions that you have to make. And you know that they're the best thing to do, may not be the most popular. And like one person said, well, Hector, you don't do this, we're just gonna vote you out as dean. And I said, that's fine. I don't live to be a dean. And that's the thing about a servant leader, that your role doesn't define who you are. And for some people, being a leader is their whole identity. And if that becomes your whole identity, then you shouldn't be in this role. And I said, if you want to vote me out, that's fine. There are other parts of me who I value, and I love the work that I do. But I have to have that stay true to your compass, so to speak. And last but not least, I think about servant leadership is that when you look at the principles of shared leadership, having worked at Pan Am as a dean, University of New Mexico, San Diego State, and here, you really have to understand the context in your environment. Because even though I practice shared leadership or servant leadership, it's done very different. And some of these principles have to rise further to the top by the context. So it's not just about who you are and your style. I think you really have to know your community and the people that you work with, and realize what of these has to rise and give greater credence to that. Because I think if anybody would follow in my 4 leadership roles, they would say, Hector, there's a common thread there, but you did it very different. And I think as like a superintendent, what you do as a whole, but how you treat each school is very different. They all have their own context. So that's what I think of servant leadership. But it's not about you. And people don't grovel at your feet. It is about earning that respect so that people can have the courage to do what they feel they need to do that may not be easy.
Thank you, President Ochoa. And thank you for modeling servant leadership. It's not often that the president of your university comes, and sits on a panel to speak directly to you. So that doesn't happen often. So thank you, President Ochoa. Connie Gonzalez.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you. There's cheese, apples. I don't know if there's coffee in the back. Again, I'm gonna re-compliment you all on being here. It is a Wednesday evening. I'm sure there's many other places that you would like to be. Dinner, happy hour, at home in your PJs. But again, it really does say a lot that you're spending this evening in investing in yourself. What I'll start with on servant leadership is that I am imperfect. And I am a work in progress, and recognizing that each and every day and all points of the day, it would be awesome for these 10 principles that if we could check them off the box and then never have to work on them again. Wouldn't that be so amazing? But every single one of these principles are literally moving on a gauge. Sometimes you're in the red part, you might be yellow, you might be orange. Hopefully we're closer to the yellow and the green, but you will never just get to the green part and it's gonna be completely closed. It's always work, work, work. And so when I think about servant leadership, it starts with us. Sure, I'm sure many of us would like to influence change and cause for other people to act a certain way immediately. That's not how it works. The one thing that we certainly can change and that I've come to realize is ourselves. And it starts off with awareness, and that is one of the servant leadership principles, awareness. Being aware of not just your what you're good at, what you bring to the table, more so being aware of your opportunities, your challenges, where you truly need to improve. And every single one of those are different based on your relationships. And so initially someone mentioned different tests, strengths finders, DISC. These are all tools to enhance your awareness. Enhance your awareness about yourself, and then also awareness about how well you work with different personalities, or how you might be able to tweak that approach on dealing and working with different personalities. Like Dr. Ochoa mentioned, it's all about relationships. If you want to be a one-man band, I'll check in with you and see how long your gas tank is full. It's not going to stay full very long. And so it truly is requiring teamwork of all different personalities, of people from all different backgrounds, all with our kinks, right? But again, it starts off with awareness and what do we need to change? What do we need to change about our approach? My initial career, my first life was in news. A lot of times I was going from one story where I was visiting with a homeless individual. My very next interview after that might have been with the mayor of the city. My approach in trying to get solid answers out of the mayor was very different than my approach, and it had to be in speaking with and respecting the person that I was speaking with that may have been homeless in that. And so really checking yourself, checking your approach, and then recognizing again, your approach is not a one size fits all. It's not a one day fits every day of the week. Things happen. Sometimes it's raining outside, others are a little bit more affected. Some might be happy about the rain, others might not. And so your approach again is checking yourself and recognizing that it is always moving like that range, that color range. But again, the different tests, the different trainings, I've been fortunate to get trained literally by this woman next to me, and she helped train the team at Brooks. It started off with this leadership team, starting at the top, making sure that we are aware about ourselves, making sure that we, the 5-member leadership team, are working well or better than the day before. And then we took that now to our manager level. Then we took that to our coordinator level, and making sure that we were really focused in how we were collaborating with each other and all of the opportunities with that. And so she saw me sometimes where I was rolling my eyes and frustrated, and let me just grab a cup of coffee and take a breath. And all of that to say that the training, the awareness, the goal truly is to build trust. If you think about maybe your favorite people, and you might have the worst day and say the worst thing to the person that you trust the most, and they trust you, they are going to interpret the maybe not so fun comment a whole different way than the person you don't trust, right? Or you have not been able to build that trust. And so eye on the prize is truly building trust with each other, giving each other benefit of the doubt. And yes, I wish that trust would come overnight. It certainly doesn't happen that way. And so again, awareness, approach, relationships ultimately to build trust, because it is going to take all of us. Otherwise, again, we're going to be running on fumes.
Thank you so much, Ms. Finnehan. She's also San Antonio Business Journal's Woman of the Year a few years ago. Thought I'd mention that. Yeah. Dr. Morgan Jones from the San Antonio Spurs.
Thank you.
Go Spurs go.
I feel like for myself, see me after later for tickets.
That's why I situated you there, brother. You always.
Everybody, I feel like myself and Richard, I think we have the hardest part of tonight of following up after such a powerful panel, and just reflecting on everything that people have been saying. I'm like, oh yes, that's really good. I'm over here taking notes myself, so thank you all so much. It's such an honor and pleasure to share a space and stage with each and every single one of you. And so again, I'm Dr. Morgan Jones. I work with Spurs Sports and Entertainment, which is home of our San Antonio Spurs, yes. It is also home of our Austin Spurs, which is our G League team, as well as San Antonio FC. How many of y'all knew we have a soccer team? Okay, so okay, good, right? Got a game on Saturday too. Come on out. But I was really excited about this question because for me, I'm in a little bit of a unique position because it's literally my role to really invest in our leaders in our organization. So you can see, like in my title, literally says Director of Trustworthy Leadership. And so I feel like it's a lot of pressure, though, right? And I believe that I've been handed a lot of different life experiences around leadership. And in that moment, I'm like, oh man, leadership's hard. It's really, really tough. But I'm also so grateful for those opportunities because being in a position like this, it kind of helps me to have more empathy. And as I'm working with different leaders in our organization and in our community, I can be able to pull from different experiences. And so in our organization, we actually have a corporate university, kind of very similar to Texas A&M San Antonio. It's called Spur Sports and Entertainment University, and it's an opportunity for our staff to engage in different classes, as which Connie mentioned, for their professional development. And so when we think about the word leadership, I think we often go to managing people, which is a very important aspect sometimes of leadership, but we really don't define leadership by title or if you manage people or not. It's really about how are you influencing those that are around you to carry out our values. And we are a values-based organization, integrity, success, and caring. That means everything that we do, from the programs to the policies to the practices, has to be led through those values. And so when we think about a leader, is how are you encouraging people? How are you role modeling? How are you showing the way? And so I know we've been talking a lot about, first of all, I love theory, okay? I feel like in our organization, I feel like, are you familiar with this framework? And they're like, what are you talking about? It's fine. So I know we've been talking a lot about theory and also some very well-known leaders and practitioners in this space. One of my favorites, which was introduced to me by my partner, is Inky Johnson. And so Inky Johnson is a former football player who had a career-ending injury. And he talks a lot about being resilient and how you overcome things that, you know, I think we all probably can relate. We've had a situation or experience in our life that was outside of our control, right? We may have been dealt a hand of cards that are like, I want to switch those out. And so Inky Johnson really talks about how do you take those cards that you're being dealt and make them into something great and use that to inspire people around you. And there's a quote that he often utilizes, and it's a quote by Dr. King. And Dr. King says, we don't measure someone's character by how they show up in times of comfort and convenience. We should be measuring someone's character by how they show up in times of challenge and controversy. Because we can go through all of these different elements of servant leadership, and it sounds good, y'all. Listening, yup. Oh, I'm empathetic. Oh, we're healing. Oh, we have awareness, right? All these different principles are important, but when you've been on your Tim Zoom call today and you have an issue, are you listening to someone? What does that listening look like? If you have an employee that may be complaining about something in this experience you've never had before, how empathetic are you going to be able to be? Or maybe, you are getting ready to launch a new program or roll out funding and someone doesn't get that funding and the community is upset about that. How are you going to show up there? And so as we think about those things in our organization, we do have a lot of assessment tests that we use, DISC and conflict resolution and situational leadership. For us, it's not only talking about those things, but how do we utilize these practices and principles and frameworks to be a foundation for us so that way when life hits and the day is long and you really are not feeling it, you can still show up with those values. And also give yourself grace because you're not every day is going to be great. And so the other half of it is how do we repair? Because there is going to be times where maybe trust may be broken or you say something that you're like, ooh, it's like toothpaste, can't put that back in. I'm so sorry to say that. So how are we also repairing relationships? And when we think about being a servant leader, it's not only about how we show up in those times of greatness, it's about how do we lead in the storm, and when things maybe get broken, how do we repair for that? Because sometimes the comeback is stronger than where you started. So.
Thank you. Thank you. And last but not least, Mr. Richard Delgado, alumnus of Texas A&M San Antonio.
Yeah, so I'm a recovering higher ed professional, is what I say. So I work for a small aerospace company. So small. So it's hard up here being the last one. So Morgan was like, okay, we got a hard no. You took some of my points. But I'm going to tell you a small story, especially those that have been on campus for the first time. I'm one of very few that got to drive this campus when Mesquite was here. Nothing was here. I saw Dr. Matla walk in, so in a room with him and others, and there was a lot of no's. There was not needed on the south side. What are y'all doing? And this is why we do what we do. going throughout the city now as an alum of A&M San Antonio, now I get to be on the other side of the conversation. I get to pull them aside and be like, remember when? Because some of those same people are now coming and asking me for advice, or hey, why did y'all do this, or what is going on? One thing that I remember and I still take today, because education is key. We can't take it away. As a kid who picked cotton up here with this esteemed panel, it shows you how education can change and transform. That is what you're doing. Look in the mirror and own that, because that is important. Those days, because being a servant leader is not easy. Walking out the door, oh, I'm not going to get emotional. Walking out the door several years ago, I made that choice. The university didn't make that choice for me. But I knew in order for it to continue to grow and thrive, you needed a different leader. You needed someone else to sit in the seat to take it to the next step. That's what sometimes when you talk about servant leadership, we tend to forget. Because it's not about us. It was never about me to this day. It is never about me. What is important is you all. What is important are those people that will sit in these same chairs 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. So it is hard. It is not easy. But what we have to remember, and what I tell folks all the time, is 3 things when I get the opportunity to pick up a mic. And I've had the opportunity more than lately than most. But I always leave you with 3 things. And these are 3 things, a little bit more background. I was wounded in Iraq, so I have 10 years in the Marine Corps that sent me here, and then my 15 years here in A&M San Antonio. Always remember, you are loved, you are wanted, and you are very much needed. So as you go through life, that smile that I have seen with these amazing tidbits that you have heard, that's what's important. Because you never know what that smile is going to do to the person that you're smiling to. It doesn't even have to be a hello. It's just a smile. And you can change the trajectory of that day for that person. You could have saved a life and you don't even know it. That's what education to me and why I'm thrilled to be up here. And it's about being on the right seat on the bus. You're on the bus. Just because you were hired for a certain position doesn't mean that's where you should be. Doesn't mean that you're not doing a great job, but the leader, the president, their staff can see something in you that maybe you fit somewhere else. Those are the challenging times where you need to sit back and look and be like, let's take this for a ride. Right? When I left here, I was, and I got to be careful because Jessica's in the room. So our chief of staff. When I left, I was hired to do military affairs. When I left, I had housing, I had student assessment, I had communications. I had a lot of different things that I was not trained for, but I didn't say no. And that's the bad part of being about a servant leader. So let's clear that real quick. Only do what you can do, right? You can say no. You can say no. That is important, is saying no. But at the end of the day, when I get to lay down, and I've been able to be in some rooms with some very powerful people, presidents of universities, presidents of head of states, presidents of our country. At the end of the day, what we also have to remember is it's not about titles, and you've heard that up here all the time. It is not about the title that you hold. If you were walking into the room with a title, you're already a step behind. It's always on how you present yourself and what you can do to give back to whatever you're doing. Because at the end of the day, that's why you are asked to do what you do. That's why you have that feeling to teach and to make the lives better of your students and those around you. That's a calling. Somebody out there, regardless of your beliefs, is laying that path for you. The hard part is being able to follow it with your eyes closed. So I'll leave you with this, and then I'll turn it back over. I know we got some questions, but I'll leave you with this. Always remember that tomorrow is going to be better than today. And it's how you choose to make tomorrow better than today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Wow. Our esteemed panel. We can't have them all night though, so we'll go dip right into the question. Very exciting. So President Ochoa, we're going to start with you, sir. Can you talk to us about why it is important for universities to get involved in community initiatives, and how do you implement your servant leadership to operationalize that concerted or strategic goal?
Well, when I first spoke, I really spoke about servant leadership from the inside of the organization. And I think what we don't really talk about is servant leadership and how you partner with outside entities. You know, the older I get, this is going to be 35 years in higher ed, that you become wiser and you realize that universities can't do it alone. You know, and that we have to realize, well, we have great human capital here, and there are people who are great at what they do. You have to really reach out and go beyond the boundaries of an institution of higher ed. And I think as a servant leader, when you're partnering with these government agencies, you really, it's context. And I think, for example, one thing, as I spoke in my investiture a week ago, is that when you look at our context here at South San Antonio, historically underserved, is that, you know, and really being a servant leader, what does that mean? And so for me, while most presidents are concerned about, oh, I just want to get the students, all I want to use for K-12 is bring more students. And that's what I need, I want students. And to me, that's a very myopic and selfish view, especially in the community of children. Because to me, you know, my growing up, I saw where there are many people who never got to college. Never got there. And I worry, and I say this with all sincerity of heart, I worry about those who never get here. So to me, it's about how do we work with K-12 to demystify that process. And that may not be, that was not the priority at San Diego. It was not the priority at other places, not like that. But understanding your community and how you work with that is very, very important. And so for me, you know, and seeing some successes in the past and know what's worked, is that we really, as I go work with the Aspire districts and other districts, is that we really, higher ed and our faculty and us need to understand what occurs in K-12 and in community colleges and in higher ed. And sometimes we see student failure not because we blame the student. I'm tired of us blaming the students. You know, well, we were educators, but we're sometimes the first ones to blame. You look at what we've got to work with, don't even go there. But the thing is when you worked and when you see professors see what's going on in high schools and what they're doing, and then you get community college and you get higher ed, part of the problem is we never talk to each other, we don't ever come alignment. And just that about looking at alignment, and you see that alignment occur, and you see what the end result is, that we have to think beyond our traditional work and our traditional borders. And to me, that's very important. You know, I talked about, I'm very proud of La Familia program here, and we have 5 school districts. Years ago. And a big number, you know. And, you know, how do we look at looking at the community, and how do we work with those K-12, and how do we get corporate sponsors to sponsor that program, to demystify that, because my parents didn't know. Luckily, they sent me to a deal at the end, they did that. And now when you look at, as I mentioned, we had 85 seniors in that program. We had 185 were seniors. And 2/3 of those seniors paid here. Because those parents knew the what and the how. Another 9% went to SAC, Community College District, or another university. I wonder if that was 75% of those students would have ever gone. And when you empower families, it's not just about what we do with the students, but how we empower that family to see the families to understand the what and the how. And that now they've got that cultural capital to understand that. Those are really critical. So for me, you know, looking at that, and we can't do it alone. We're growing so fast here. You know I can drive the city crazy out there. But, you know, I really feel that we've not gotten our fair share. I mean, let's be very honest in South San Antonio. And it's about, you know, we need roads, you know. And you know, if Toyota's bringing a $500 million investment, and JCB's bringing that, and so we've dealt with servant leadership that we've gotten Toyota together, we've gotten Southwest ISD, we've gotten University Health together, we've got VITA, we've got the university. And we need to say this is a common goal that